Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. Now, the proverbial belt has been tightened. You hear the expression, tighten your belt, and Kenyans are being asked to tighten it once again, this time to dig deeper, to pay higher prices for maize, flour, cooking oil, and fuel, just to name a few. Politicians across the political divide are pointing fingers at each other. But politics aside, what really is behind the cost of living? And is it purely a Kenyan issue or a global one? Now, joining us on the program for that debate, we have Dr. Makali Mulu, who's a member of the Budget Committee in the National Assembly, MP Kitui Central. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. And good evening, viewers.
Great. We're also joined by Wanjiru Gikonyo, who's the National Coordinator, the Institute for Social Accountability. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And last but not least, Dr. Jim McPhee, who's a lecturer at Strathmore University. Welcome to the program as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Also want to let you know, you can weigh in. 2242 is the SMS line. The hashtag is the Monday Report. But first things first, let's take a look at some statistics that paint a picture of what's happening in Kenya, across East Africa, and a little bit around what's happening around the world. Let's put the first one up. In terms of the cost of living right now, these were some of the prices. January 2021 is the first column, January 2022, and then where we are at right now. Maize flour, 2 kilograms, 117 shillings last year, 126 shillings earlier this year, and right now roughly at 210. Cooking oil, 1 litre, was about 228 shillings in January 2021. 303 shillings in January 2022, and as we speak, roughly different brands range at about 400 shillings. The only good news, it seems, is in the world of potatoes, at least from a consumer's perspective, from 68 shillings in January 2021 to 76 shillings in January 2022, and the farmers that we spoke to today give us the average figure of 60 shillings for 1 kilogram of potatoes. And super petrol, I'm sure I don't need to run you through those numbers. We've been talking about them, 106.99 shillings in January 2021. In January 2022, 129.72 shillings. And right now, for 1 litre of super petrol, you will spend 159.12 shillings. We also have one last one. Let's take a look at the super petrol prices across the region for some context. This is what's happening. Kenya, 159.12 shillings, as I mentioned, and this is all in Kenya shillings. Rwanda, 167.59 Kenya shillings. That's higher than Kenya. Uganda seems to be leading in the region, 176.99 Kenya shillings. While Congo, 1 litre of petrol, 137.67 shillings. And Tanzania, 150.79 Kenya shillings. So it's no secret that the cost of living has gone up, but what are the issues around that? That's what I want to discuss with my guests who are here with us in studio right now. And of course, politicians have traded barbs on who is to blame for the high cost of living. We want to put that aside, and that's why the politician on this table will have the last word on this first question. Let me start with you, Dr. McPhee. What, in your view, is really behind the high cost of living?
Well, I think the first thing that we've got to keep in mind is the fact that 2 years ago, almost to the day, oil was trading at $37 a barrel. A year ago, it was trading at $75 a barrel. So in other words, there was more than 100% increase in the price between June 2020 and June 2021. The price today is $110 a barrel. So in other words, it is 3 times what it was 2 years ago. So, and that price, it's fluctuating up and down all the time, because if there's a lockdown in China, they're going to import less oil. There's also a problem, the whole thing of Russia. Russia is a major exporter of oil. They export about 4.5 million barrels a day. That is being cut out because of the American sanctions against, the Western sanctions against Russia. Mm-hmm. So the result is, that's number one. But number two, we also have to keep in mind that the dollar is increasing in value at the moment. It's increasing in value for 2 reasons. Number one, the view in the Western world is that Europe is going to be hit very much worse than the US as a result of the Ukraine war. Number two, interest rates in the US have risen very much more than they have in the European Union. The European Central Bank has not really raised interest rates at all, whereas already in the US they've raised them. So The fact is that everyone is buying dollars. Now, if you take a year ago...
It's been hitting home here, and I don't know when Giro organization wrote
so
about that.
But I'm going to give you a piece of information which is incredibly important. A year ago, the Kenya shilling was trading at 107 shillings and 70 cents to a dollar. Today, it's 117.53 to the dollar. So, in other words, the dollar has increased against the Kenya shilling by 9%, 9.1% to be precise. However, against the euro, in the same period of time, it's increased by 13.01%. So in other words, the dollar has actually gone up against the euro more than against the Kenya shilling. So that means...
Why?
Because of what I mentioned a moment ago. Number one, interest rates in the US have gone up very much more than in Europe. And number two, America is going to be less affected by the Ukraine war. Even the British pound, the dollar a year ago, if it was trading, in fact, a year ago, 0.719 pounds to the dollar. Today, it's 0.815. The pound has actually dropped 13.4% against the dollar.
What do you say to Kenyans who say they understand that there's a Russia-Ukraine factor, but they also feel that that card has been overused by government to sort of push away this is what's happening with the runaway cost of living? Would you respond to Kenyans who tonight say, that's fine, but I feel there are other issues as well that are affecting my pocket?
I think it's important to keep in mind that inflation is occurring. The rate of inflation at the moment in the US is higher than it is in Kenya. So the point is, this is a worldwide problem. It's very, very unfortunate because Putin had the respect of many people in the world. It's very unfortunate he made this mistake of going into the Ukraine war. That has had its effect, but also there are many other factors. There are many other factors.
I'll come to you for that.
But I'll allow the politicians to
No, one more before we get to the politicians.
Are you calling me a politician? Not a politician, advocate. There's a difference.
Uchumi issued a statement last week.
Right.
What were their key concerns on the state of the economy?
Right. Our key concern really, and I have the title, is we were looking at the exchange rate crisis and we were asking the question, is this a looming fiasco or an opportunity to rebalance Kenya's economic concerns? And the reason we issued this statement is last year we reached out to Kenyatta University, the economics department, and we spoke to a couple of the lecturers there and asked them, help us understand this fiscal consolidation program. Because as Okoa Uchumi, we've been concerned about public debt, the rising public debt, the rising repayments. And we therefore conducted, as Kenya was entering into the fiscal consolidation program, we were asking ourselves, are we going to make the same mistakes that were made in the 90s when government got into the structural adjustment programs?
You're talking about engagement with IMF, World Bank?
IMF, without negotiating properly and agreed to certain conditionalities that have had very long-term devastating effects, because the IMF comes in with fiscal consolidation and they tell government, stop spending, increase your taxation so that you can rebalance your books. And in many cases, they then cut social spending in areas they shouldn't have. Now, the IMF then says they learned a few lessons and this time they were going to do it differently. But when we reviewed the program, we found, number one, we have a challenge with the taxation priorities, whereas we agree there is a lot of evasion, there's a lot of tax that's not collected, there's a lot of revenue that is not collected for political reasons or due to corruption. We do not agree with where this government is taxing, because our view is this government has been taxing those who already pay. They go for VAT, they go for excise tax, they go for forms of taxation that are very easy to collect instead of doing the hard work of sealing the loopholes where there are political leakages. We also had a problem with macroeconomic policy. Now, we are governance institutions, we work on devolution, we engage on the in the budget process, we don't normally look at macroeconomic policy because we assume that's an expert area. So now these macroeconomic experts said, look, Kenya, the CBK has been, propping up the exchange rate. Why are they propping up the exchange rate? We think it's because we've contracted a lot of debt in hard currency. And so there is a concern, if you don't prop up the exchange rate, then the cost of debt repayment is going to go up comparatively.
It's already a significant part of our budget.
Right. It's already, we are talking about over $1 trillion under the current budget, I think $1 trillion. 1.2
yes.
or something in terms of debt repayment. A significant amount, maybe half of that, is in external debt, which is contracted in hard currency. Now, the effect of pegging the exchange rate is that by not allowing the exchange rate to find its equilibrium, it then becomes expensive for manufacturers to export regionally. It then becomes cheaper to import than to export. So the macroeconomic policy is not conducive to the recovery, because actually to generate the dollars you need to export, be competitive on the regional market so you can earn enough money to pay off your debt. The other thing is this government, which in some circles is known as a criminal enterprise, and I agree with that. You may say it's politics.
Did I say that?
No, you may agree with that. You may say it's politics.
Yeah, you need to, that's a strong statement.
It's a very strong statement. And I'll say this. There's been serial violations of the public finance management regulations to procure expensive debt for projects that are not giving returns. And that has been done by circumventing and violating the laid down procedures. So we've gotten ourselves into national interest projects that are very expensive, that are debt financed, that then don't give returns and are import heavy. So not only do you borrow money, put it in projects that aren't giving returns, to build those projects you import. So this government has been extremely irresponsible with debt. And the reason they've been able to do this is because in the public finance management, apart from the debt ceiling, all debt decisions sit in the Treasury. They are not with the Public Debt Management Office. They are not with Parliament. Parliament only simply approves the debt ceiling. And unfortunately, Parliament has been like a chorus or a choir. When they are told go high, they say yes, higher, higher, and they haven't done their oversight role. And that's why I use the term criminal enterprise, because government has made decisions that have come back. The burden is borne by the citizen, who is not privy to those decisions.
Well, the beauty is Dr. Mulu is next to you, and I'll give him a chance to immediately respond to that. Even as he tells us, I know he's been out on the campaign trail. Today we're not talking politics. Yeah. And I know the cost of living is a question I'm sure keeps coming back to you.
Yes.
Away from all the factors of the Russia-Ukraine crisis and global oil, global challenges as well, what options do we have as a country to really bring down the cost of living, Daktari, from where you sit?
Yeah, thank you very much, Waiga. Maybe before I come to the issue of what we need to do, is important I also weigh in on the issue of why are we where we are. And I think basically, I would put this into categories. I think we have what we call external factors, which contribute to what is happening. But there are also domestic factors, which are like local factors, which are Kenyan factors. At the international level, I think the challenge we have as a country is that we are relying so much on imports. When you look at our industries in terms of inputs, we are importing a lot. When you look at our own consumption patterns, there's a lot of imported goods, and that brings to play the issue of foreign exchange.
I actually have a list here. We're importing maize, wheat,
basically that's
cooking
a challenge.
oil, toilet paper.
Because what happens is normally when you rely so much on external production in terms of imports, then you need the foreign currency to import. And that's why you see basic economics talks about supply and demand. When the supply is low and demand is high, the prices will always increase. So it's just the same as exchange rate. When you require more dollars and you are not getting the dollars through your own exports, then you want to import more, then your local currency has to suffer in terms of devaluation. And that's why you see this is now the international issue. The other issue which is critical is also the domestic issue. I think, Waiga, we can't run away from the fact that the country is also going through some challenges. We have serious drought, which has affected food production in this country. And this affects the prices of goods, basic things, as you said, maize, beans, which are the basic requirements in every family. So what is happening because of the shortage of these goods also, then the prices are going up. And that's why you see the whole issue of cost of living, because it's normally a measure of basic, whether you're able to acquire basic goods and services to survive either at family level or at individual level. So once you put that basket together, you realize that then most prices have gone up. And that's why you see now the cost of living becomes a major concern to Kenyans. And that's why you see this year, unlike other years, the issues of economy have become very central in our politics. Everybody's talking about economy and how to recover as an economy, how to revive the economics of this country. And that's why, while I agree with my colleagues, I think on this table, I'm the only person who has had the advantage of serving almost all these areas. I've worked in the central government as an economist. I've worked with the civil society as a consultant, and now I'm a politician. The only area I've not worked is judiciary.
How much of their concerns or their theories about what went wrong is true in your view?
You know, Waiga, as an economist, when we are doing our papers, there's always we call theoretical framework. How you hang your theories. The challenge I find with most of our scholars is that they have a lot of theories, and they lack the practical aspect of it. And that is not different from this table.
Dr. Mulu, can I ask Dr. Mulu a question?
I'm just trying to explain so that we get... So what happens, Waiga, like the point my sister is making here, the issue of how Parliament makes decisions. Waiga, I think I've explained this many times. Unlike in a classroom, where we listen seriously and we get to more objective, in Parliament, it's a matter of voting. And we always say the majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. So you might have a very good point, and you present your point very well, but you realize the majority of the House, members of the House, don't agree with you. So when it comes to voting, and the other point, let me allow one word in, then I give you. Yeah. And then you have also to notice, unlike in a PhD class where everybody has a master's degree, a Parliament is a place where you find some of us have the basic education, others have a PhD like me, and we are together. And when it comes to voting, one vote like person who has just a normal certificate. So these are the major issues. And I think now, the issue of, we have discussed a lot about the issue of minimum academic qualifications. You think people would help us push that hard. They keep quiet. So they allow us only people.
Dr. Mulu.
Okay, you don't have to ask the question. Okay, he has given you permission to ask.
Dr. Mulu, there is values that, that basic education, without the values, it doesn't help. But I think Dr. Mulu is agreeing about this. Okay, it's a strong allegation of the criminal enterprise that includes Parliament, because the question is, the Parliamentary Budget Office made recommendations around the expenditure priorities of Parliament. It has been doing so for the last 3-4 years, saying put more money in agriculture, remove money from wasteful infrastructure projects, have realistic revenue projections, cut the waste, cut the slippage, but then Parliament sits, deliberates, and for whatever political reasons, they ignore the needs of citizens. So the point is...
I can clarify that.
Dr. Mulu, there are external...
Finish the question that he responds.
Question. Okay. There are external factors, but isn't it true that Parliament has not done its role in reining in the expenditure priorities and the waste at the expenditure point?
Respond then, Dr. McPhee.
Actually, I can respond on that. Waiga, I must confirm to the viewers that our Parliamentary Budget Office is one of the best in the world, not even in the Africa region, in the world. And they give very good technical hand advice. But I'm sure all of us have been consultants. The work of a consultant is to give you advice. You are not the implementer of what you give. So I can tell you for sure they have advised Parliament, and as an economist I can attest to that we get the best advice. But when it comes to the final decision making, which must be done by the members of Parliament, not the technician, then that's where things go wrong. And basically because some will not appreciate, there's also a lot of lobbying. Waiga, what people forget is, Like now we are all campaigning. As Mio have given their proposals in terms of this is what we'll do for Kenya. Kenya Kwanza have given also their proposals. So even when you are making the budget, the site which goes to take government from August 9th, is the site which is supposed now to implement their manifesto. So in implementing their manifesto, it gets to a level where they'll be telling their members of parliament who have won and own their tickets that we have a manifesto to implement so that Kenyans give us another 5 years. So when the budget is being done, it's aligned to that manifesto. And it gets to a level where we say, since it's aligned to our manifesto, when it comes to passing the budget, then it must be passed by the same wing, which more likely will have the majority. So when your party leader whips you, that this is our manifesto, and we must fund this manifesto. I'm not being realistic as a scholar. I'm not talking as a politician. We call him there as a politician. Now, when it comes to passing the budget, the thing will be the party leaders will lobby their teams, saying, this is our manifesto. We promised Kenyans. Like, for example, I want to give a very good example. Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga has promised Kenyans, every household, 6,000 Kenya shillings. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you for sure, the budget we have just passed, come September, you see another supplementary budget, which will be now aligned towards that direction. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, what will happen now? And
William Ruto has
all of us,
Hustlers Fund.
Yeah, you remember the 100 million for even micro small. So what will happen is, now, if it happens that they get the majority in terms of House representation, mm-hmm. they will be whipping their members to amend the budget towards that direction. So at that point, issues of objectivity, issues of priority will disappear.
Out the window.
Out of the window.
Hold on there. Dr. McPhee, before we get caught up on this, help Kenyans also understand this. Some are asking this evening, how do you explain that the food supply we get from our neighbors in certain instances is cheaper? Onions, fruits, Tanzania, maize, Uganda, and yet we exist in the same climatic zone. So is it a global issue? Is it a local issue? Is it a regional issue?
Number one, we don't actually exist in the same climatic zone. That's the first thing. Uganda, if you go up to northeast Uganda and you have the Karamojong up there, okay? But you see, of Kenya's 580,000 square kilometers, to the east of Lake Turkana, we have 100,000 acres, which is pure desert. So, in fact, the 80% of the Kenya population,
okay, carry on.
The 80% of the Kenya population is actually living in 20% of the land. And Uganda is a much more fertile country. So it's much easier. Number two, as Dr. Makali was saying, the fact is demand for maize in Uganda is much less than, their staple food is, the bananas.
The bananas.
So this means that the demand for maize in Uganda is very much lower. I have a past student, Isaac Njuguna, he's in the egg industry, and he actually buys all of his raw materials except lime from Koru. Everything else is bought from Uganda because it's cheaper there. But you see, the point here really is that, we have taxes. I think Wanjiru was mentioning that. We have taxes in Kenya which are not imposed in the same way. Mind you, you've got to remember that KRA is a very, very efficient tax collector. In Nigeria, the revenue authority there collect a very small percentage of the GDP. Mm. We collect almost 20% of our GDP through the KRA. So it's a very efficient engine. And I think it's important because that obviously is what is needed to fund government. But I think government sometimes puts targets for KRA which are way above what KRA can actually achieve. But anyway, having said that, I think, you see, we've got to keep in mind, I'm in the coffee industry a little bit as well, okay? And 4 coffee factories in Western Kenya have closed down because those people will get more for their coffee in Uganda, and yet when they go over there, they will be able to buy their maize flour, their sugar, even Tusker, more cheaply than in Kenya. Now, what's the explanation? The explanation is our middlemen. Our middlemen. They are the experts in giving the farmers a low price and demanding a high price for that same commodity from the consumer. So if we can eliminate them, but even the laws are set in such a way that it's very difficult to eliminate them. So this is one of the factors that we have to keep in mind. But also, we've got to try to see, you know, you go down to Mali, there are ladies there who are producing onions. As you say, when you go to Wakulima market, the onions are coming from Tanzania. And, you know, I feel here that, you know, we've got to actually be much more patriotic. We talk about a free trade area in Africa. I'm against that.
Sure.
Why? I'm against it because we have to protect our farmers in Kenya. We have to protect our industries in Kenya. This is why Nigeria was one of the last countries in the whole of Africa to sign on. Why? Because they had to protect their industry. But everyone hears, oh yeah, you know, this is good. Without thinking 1 inch, everyone thinks, yeah, this is good. Why? Because as Dr. Makali was saying, it's in the textbook. Is it on the ground? My past two advisor could
We need to
that.
sort your microphone, so hold your point.
Okay, very good.
There's a slight challenge with that. Let's take a short break. We come back. I'm seeing a lot of your questions. What a fascinating discussion we're having. I don't think we'd have had a better panel helping us understand different perspectives. Dr. Makali Mulu from the National Assembly, Wanjiru Gikonyo from the Institute of